Welcome, Osama, to our annual Top 10 Games.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
Let's start with number 10.
So my number 10 is Cult of the Lamb. It's a roguelike combat base builder game with really cute graphics. It's based on a cult leader who is a lamb, and it's an excellent mix of really good humor and really good synergy between theme and systems. It's a good contrast between the cute graphics of the game and the vicious nature of the combat that you engage in and the different sacrifices and other things that you do as part of this cult leader persona that you embody. So the criticism for this is some player actions don't make sense. You come back to your base and you have to clean up poop, and you're the cult leader, so why are you doing this? The combat is simplistic. There's not enough there to keep it engaging for a long period of time. It's not bad, it's just very simple. There's not enough depth. And it did get repetitive after a little bit of time. There wasn't enough that was introduced to it. So number 9, I have Horizon Forbidden West, sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn, which was one of my favorite games of 2017. The good about the game is that it has gorgeous environment. It's really pretty to look at, an excellent narrative, and really exciting combat. So you fight these robot animals, and all of them are different with different strategies, and you have all these weapons that you could set into place, so you could approach most of them depending on the combat sequence with stealth or with traps or head on, and you have all the tools to be able to do that. The bad, I felt there were too many combat options. I was actually often overwhelmed with all the choices and would just pick one or two strategies and would only shift strategies if it didn't work. I felt the same way about the progression system. At the end of the day, you ignored everything and then until you got to a shop. So what's the point of having all these things? What you want is for the players to have a sense of the value of what's being dropped so that they get excited when these things drop. So number 8 is Stacklands. It's a card game, but it's also a city builder. So you're actually opening packs of cards, and these packs of cards, you're combining them together just by placing them one on top of each other, and they build things. So if you put, for example, wood, brick, and some other resource, you're going to build the house. Then you have all these gold resources that are also cards that you're placing on other packs so that you could open new packs. It's very accessible. You just try a combination, put two things together. You don't really need much tutorial or any explanation. Just try different things and it'll work. And it's very engaging as a result. The bad is the UI is a little too minimalist and not very clear, and even sometimes not very functional. And the second is it's a little too luck-based. You could be doing amazing, and then you open a pack and you have these monsters that are just way too powerful for you to defeat, and you had no warning. You couldn't prepare for it. It almost felt like it was intentional. After a certain timer, you were going to die, and that timer was extended with time. The difficulty spiked a little too sharply. At number 7, I have Midnight Suns. So the combat is very engaging, a lot of fun, really good options. It uses the space in a very good way. A lot of the attack, for example, they need to be changed together, and you have to have certain placements. So you use another attack to get that placement. So all of a sudden it opens up a lot of different options. You feel clever every time you use these combinations of cards. I thought that part was amazing. The other part is that I actually think the narrative is pretty good. But my favorite thing is it's also optional. If we don't want to engage with this so much of it is just skippable. The bad, the humor was hit and miss. And that says a lot coming from a person like me who loves dad jokes and puns. And sadly, the art overall was unappealing. Some of the animations were a little bit stiff. Some of the models felt uneven. And even some of the character designs, as someone who grew up with those characters, that's not what the character looks like in any version that I've seen before, and it didn't really feel like the essence of who the character was. This is probably going to be the most controversial game on my list, so I'll say it right now. Overwatch 2. And the reason it's controversial is because only the multiplayer version of Overwatch 2 was released. The single-player campaign is set to come out next year. And as a result, a lot of people don't feel like it was actually a full release. What I loved about it is it had massive improvements to so many characters. Orisa as a tank was a character I didn't really care for before, and now she's one of my favorite characters. Moved from a 6-on-6 fighter to a 5-on-5 fighters, and because of that, it's less tanky, there's more action, more characters are being defeated, or a lot less hiding behind shields. All the shields were weakened. Those changes needed to happen. Some of the more annoying characters were modified to make them much less annoying. So all those balance changes made it a game that I already loved much better, a lot more fun. I'm still playing it practically daily. And the new characters were great. They offer really new strategies and new dynamics. So for me, that's all I was really looking for. The bad, it's the little details in the UI, like when you're launching a game at the beginning, it tells you the name of the map that you're in. But if you don't remember what map it is by name, then you have no way of knowing what you're going into. And it's so important to pick the right character for your map that really they should have had a visual representation of what the map is so people can pick their character. Monetization is pretty rough if you like to buy vanity skins. It's very pricey. It does feel like more like an update to a game than a game. So does it deserve the Overwatch 2? That's controversial. At number 5, I have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which is a beat 'em up, an old school pixel art arcade beat 'em up. We don't see many of these being released these days. It had a nostalgic feel. It felt like a game I've played before, but it adapted to current norms. Like, it didn't have all of the rough spots that we would encounter in old beat 'em up games. I'm a huge fan of retro gaming and I love them for what they are, but like the rough spots, our memory does something to it and we don't remember them until the moment like that we're actually playing. We always smooth them out. This game does that in an incredible way. It actually smooths them out for you while still retaining all that nostalgia and the feel of what those games were before. The pixel art is gorgeous, some of the best pixel art animations I've seen in any game, period. And it doesn't overstay its welcome. The game is short and sweet, not too short. It's just the right length. So those are all the good things. The bad, it doesn't have a lot of replayability. And so if you're looking for that in this kind of game, go for it. I finished the game. I was done with it. I was very happy and I moved on. And it didn't have a lot of different game modes. It had a story mode and it had a arcade mode. And there was like one collection, like for completionists who like collecting things, there's another layer where you could go back and revisit some of the levels and collect different things. I don't see these as negatives myself. I am super happy that the game could just last like 5 or 6 hours and it ended and I felt satisfied and it didn't overstay its welcome. My number 4 is God of War Ragnarok. It is world class, top of the line when it comes to writing and VO performance, any kind of acting, facial rigs, animations. Like, watching this game in the cinematic moments is a work of art. The combat is also best in class in cinematic combat. It transitions from the cinematics to the combat to the play in an incredible, seamless way. It's a joy to experience any of that. What a beautiful game. What a beautiful story. Incredible music that sticks with you, humming it after playing all the time. The bad, I felt there were many sections that had too many puzzles that just slowed things down to a grind. Like, I didn't feel clever when I solved them. It slowed the game down to a point where I was many times frustrated because I just wanted to get to the next cinematic. And the second thing is, I felt the crafting system was completely superfluous. A slight weapon number goes up. It's not like the gameplay of the weapons changed anything. This is a game you play for the story, the narrative, and the combat experience. The rest felt like a chore. I think you could have absolutely cut out the entire crafting system and it would have made for a better game. So number 3, I have Vampire Survivor. It's an incredibly simple concept. You have a movement and that's it. You're like top-down little character in the middle of the screen and you get to move left, right, up and down, and all of your attacks fire off automatically at the preset rate. And you're picking up power-ups, and then that way you get more attacks that fire or they do more damage, and you constantly have waves of enemies coming at you. The progression system is super addictive because you unlock more characters that have different starting points, you unlock new levels that have different enemies. Very simple, but very engaging. You're in the moment there, just dodging all these characters and maneuvering so that you start to get the feel, like the rhythm of your attacks, and you position yourself in the right situation so that you could clear the most enemies possible and pick up more collectibles. The bad, the art is rough and actually looked stolen, and the soundtrack was not to my liking, but still, this is a game that must be experienced. Those who love it will love it a lot. It is a really good way to wind down from a workday, but it's also a really good way to just warm up for another game session or what have you. Excellent game. Number 2 is Marvel Snap. It's a card game that you play on mobile. It does have a PC version, but I play primarily on mobile. It is made by the creators of Hearthstone, who started their own company, took the Marvel license, and made the most elegant mobile card game I have ever seen, and possibly that will ever exist. It is that good, incredibly elegant, very few moving parts. All of them are meaningful. All of them synergize and play well with other cards. Incredibly low barrier to entry, really good progression where they introduce you to very simple cards at the beginning that still have good synergies and introduce more complex cards with better strategies as time progresses. The combos, the synergies are some of the funnest I've experienced in any digital card game that I've seen. You clearly see that they learned a lot from working on Hearthstone for years, which was an excellent game in its own right. The rounds are super short. You can finish a game between 2 and 6 minutes, and so you could chain a bunch of games together. You don't feel bad when you lose one. You feel really good when you win one, and that's a really good combination. 2 bad points that I would mention. It does have a few UX issues with understanding what can be some menu navigation things, like some toggles are not very clear. It's there, everything's in front of you, but it's not necessarily in the right place, or there's no emphasis on it. And the other is, depending on who you ask, they might think the monetization is a little harsh. Some of the bundles, I absolutely agree. The cards don't bring back the value of how much they cost. But overall, I feel it's a good drip of enough cards that you get just from playing the game normally that I don't think it's that bad, but it could have been improved. My number 1 game of the year is Elden Ring. If you had told me that it was going to be at the beginning of this year, I would not have believed you. And the reason for this is Elden Ring is made by From Software, basically a company that makes games that are very atmospheric and incredibly difficult. Like, they're designed to be frustrating so that players feel a sense of achievement when they get through them. It's an open world. It's the first of these games that's an open world, and it did some things very differently. If there was going to be one Souls-like game that was going to get me, it was going to be this one. And I started playing this game and I quit it 5 times. And when I say I quit it, for real, I did not expect to go back. I was frustrated by certain parts of it. But certain mechanics allowed me to come back. Where in other Souls games, they were more linear. Like, this is a boss. You have to get good enough to beat this boss. If you cannot, you have very little recourse. You have to just keep trying. Here, you have a horse, you could run by it. Sometimes you could just go explore a different part of the world. You could level up and then come back and try to beat it later. So many times I would get frustrated at a boss, quit, take 2-3 days off, really have the urge to come back because the world building and the storytelling is so good, come back, decide not to fight the boss, go fight someone else, come back and beat the boss and progress again. And I did that 5 times. It is a masterclass in exploration. The lore is rich, it's very deep. There's a lot of player agency, all the weapons play differently, all the different strategies and approaches that you could have to the bosses. A lot of times you try a thing and it just works and you're shocked. All those good things make it really a masterpiece of a game. It's not just a game. From all of the games that I played this year, this is the one that I would consider a masterpiece, a really best in class. That said, there are many rough spots. It's uneven. It's not a great UX experience. A lot of the menu options are just poorly designed, in my opinion, and for no good reason. The button that opens up the map is not the button that closes the map, as an example. And I still think they needed a difficulty setting. And I think a lot of people would enjoy this game just exploring it without the needlessly difficult combat. I get that a lot of people feel strongly against this and feel that the game experience will be very different without that. But they have to understand that there are different player types. There are people who are not playing the game for a sense of achievement or challenge, are only playing it for the exploration and the lore. And if you want to have a big mainstream game, you're just going to get more people if you have these options. But I know many of the fans of this games are rabid defenders of the difficulty because that's what they enjoy about it. They just need to understand that that's not what everybody enjoys. No 2 gamers are built equal. Through all of those, it is a game that I would recommend for anyone who likes exploration. It is a masterclass in exploration. There are very few games that come even close. Breath of the Wild is one of them. I can't even think of another that had that level of exploration.
I really appreciate you sharing all these games. A lot of them are new to me. I'm definitely going to go check some out. And I wish you and everyone that you love a really wonderful 2023.
Thank you. And same to you. This has been a lot of fun both years. Looking forward to next year. And yeah, I'm always at your service, Amy.
But wait, there's more. To hear the full replay, where Osama and I go deeper into game design issues, click here. Let's get smarter together. See you in the next video.